The only food supply that you can really count on is the one that you build yourself. Because if a disaster hits, you can be certain that you're not going to be able to rely on your local grocery store anymore. Around here in New England, people storm the supermarkets and clear out the shelves when there's a bad snowstorm coming. So you can only imagine what would happen if a real disaster struck. And if it seems funny or it feels kind of paranoid to say that you're stockpiling food, don't think of it that way. Think of it as building a food bank. Because basically you're banking on your future and your future survival. And this isn't just a good idea to prepare for some unforeseen disaster that may or may not happen. This is practical just for everyday life. Because food prices have been going way up, and they're going to keep on going up. So you'll save yourself some money in the long term if you're buying your food now while it's still relatively cheap. And later on, when other people are paying $8 for a loaf of bread and struggling to make ends meet, you'll be all set for a while. Or let's say you get laid off from your job or you lose your income. That would qualify as a disaster in anybody's book. Well, this would be one less thing you have to worry about. You don't have to stress over feeding yourself and your family during lean times. So how much food should you store up? Well, I would say go for a year's supply. Some sources will recommend 3 months, others say 6. Nobody can really say how much is enough. I like a year because I feel comfortable knowing that I've got that much food and I can last that long without having to worry about replenishing it if something happens. And we're not talking about a static food supply. This is something that's going to be ongoing. You don't just store up food and put it on a shelf and forget about it until it spoils. Or, you're going to be consuming this food as you go along. So this is going to be an ongoing thing that you're going to be keeping up on. And don't get overwhelmed. I'm not talking about running out and buying a year's supply of food all at once. You're going to want to do it in stages. Just when you go food shopping every week, pick up a few extra staple items. Like if you usually buy 2 cans of beans every week, buy 4 cans. Or if you get 3 cans of tuna, buy 6 cans. And do it little by little. And the next thing you know, you got a week's supply of food stored up, and then 2 weeks, and then a month, and so on. As long as you keep up with it, you'll be okay. You might want to break down your consumption. Figure out how much food you go through in a week, your regular items. Let's say if you usually go through 2 boxes of spaghetti in a week, then multiply that by 4, and you know that you need 8 boxes of spaghetti to get you through a month. And do that with all of your regular food items. Stock up on dry foods and dehydrated foods. Those things have a shelf life of like forever. And if you get a membership at one of the discount wholesale clubs like BJ's or Costco, you can buy the stuff in bulk real cheap. So don't go out and buy a bunch of boxes of rice-a-roni. Go out and get yourself a 50-pound bag of white rice. You'll have that. It'll last for a while, and you can do anything you want with it. Some other good dehydrated foods to stock up on are pasta, legumes, that's beans and peas for us regular folks, powdered milk, potato flakes, baking flour, and other ingredients for making bread, juice mixes, and so on. Canned foods, obviously, are good items to stock up on. They're relatively cheap, and they have a long shelf life. A lot of people think of vegetables and fruits when you talk about commercially canned foods, but not a lot of people consider fish, especially as part of a survival diet. Fish has got a lot of nutrients that aren't found in other foods. They're a really important food source, and you should include them in your diet. And you can get all kinds of fish in cans. Tuna, obviously, everybody knows about, but you can get salmon, whitefish, mussels, clams, crab, sardines. I like kippers myself. Whatever you like. But it is an important part of the survival diet if you like fish. Then there's beans and soup and stew and all the other canned staples. Spam, say whatever you like about Spam, but if we didn't give it to the British during World War II, then the Beatles would have written all their songs in German. And while we're on canning, I'm a big fan of home canning. I wrote a complete home canning guide. You can get it on CompleteSurvivalist.com. I really like the canning process. It's cheap. The equipment it doesn't cost a lot of money, and it's real easy to do. And a lot of people don't know that you can can meat at home, which I think is preferable to freezing. The big liability with freezing is electricity. In a disaster situation, it's very likely that you won't have any electricity, and if you have a whole lot of meat in the freezer, that's all going to go bad. But also there's the quality factor. While frozen meat will stay safe to eat indefinitely, after it's been in the freezer for a couple of months, you really don't want to eat it. Anybody who's had freezer burned meat, you know what I'm talking about. Whereas with canned meats, you can open that mason jar 6 months from now, 8 months from now, and the meat will be as fresh and as tasty as it was when it first went in the jar. The canning process seals in all the juices and all the quality, the flavor of the meat, and you just lose that when you freeze it. Same thing with fruits and vegetables. It just maintains its nice, fresh quality, and those will stay good for 12 months to 18 months. Meats will anyway. It'll still be safe to eat after 12 months, but after that period, it starts to lose some of its quality and some of its nutrients. Fruits and vegetables will stay good to eat up to 2 years. So that's a good thing to consider and make that a part of your survival diet, or make it part of your survival skill set, is learn how to can your own foods. And you'll save a lot of money too. It'll cost even less than buying canned foods from the store. You should also learn how to dehydrate your own meat. And you can do that without any special equipment. You can dehydrate, make your own jerky in your oven. And you can learn how to dehydrate your own fruits as well. And that's the same reason it doesn't require any refrigeration or freezing. Dehydrated meats were very popular back before the days of refrigeration and before the canning process was perfected. Then there's MREs, or EBMs. Anybody who's been in the military is familiar with MREs. That stands for Meals Ready to Eat, and EBMs are Emergency Backup Meals. MREs are self-contained meals that don't require any refrigeration. They don't require any cooking. You can heat them up if you want to, but you don't have to. And it's a full meal with an entree and side dishes, and it even comes with a dessert. And it's got all the calories and all of the nutrients that you need. They travel well, so they're good to have in case you need to bug out. If you're forced to evacuate or leave your house, you want to grab a bunch of MREs, have them in your 72-hour bag, which I'll get into in a minute. They last for about 15 years. Actually, I don't even think they spoil at all. But I think after 10 years, they start to deteriorate a little bit. The quality starts to go down, and they start to lose their nutrients. But if you keep them stored at around 60 degrees, they should last for about 10 years. And they don't taste bad either. I mean, they're not gourmet meals, but they have a good selection of entrees to choose from. And I eat them all the time. I take them with me when I go camping. I eat them for lunch when I'm around the house if I don't feel like cooking anything or going through too much trouble. And they're a good addition to your food bank. They're not a mainstay. You don't want to live off of them. You'd probably go nuts if you had to eat them all the time for a month or two. But they're good emergency meals. That's basically what they're meant for. EBMs are just stripped down MREs. They still have a lot of calories and a lot of nutrients. They're just not as full a meal as an MRE is. They're pretty cheap too, especially when you buy them in bulk. I think you can get a pack of 12 MREs for like $60, which works out to about $5 per meal. EBMs are a little cheaper. I'm not sure exactly how much. I usually just get MREs. And you can find them on a number of websites. Just Google MREs or Meals Ready to Eat, and you'll have no trouble finding websites that sell them, as well as other survival gear. Then there's emergency rations like Mayday bars, Mainstay bars, protein bars. These are just big slabs of pure concentrated survival food. They're pretty indestructible. They're high in calories, high in nutrients. They'll keep you alive, but you won't want to live on them. They're good to keep in your go bag in case you have to bug out, and it's a good addition to your food bank. And while we're on the subject of survival food, it's important to point out that you should store foods that you actually like to eat. Being in a survival situation doesn't mean you have to eat boring or unpalatable food. Food does more than just nourish your body. It also helps you maintain a healthy mental and emotional state. And having a wide variety of tasty food to eat will go a long way in keeping your morale up. Because after all, it's not just about surviving, it's about living. Also, your food bank should be a growing, evolving part of your everyday life. You should plan on eating this food as you go along, whether there's an emergency or not. I really don't recommend putting up a stockpile of food just to let it sit there and spoil should you never have to rely on it as your primary food source. That would be just a waste of time as well as money. So don't just go out and buy a year's supply of freeze-dried survival bricks or some other food that you wouldn't want to eat unless you absolutely had to. I know some guys whose food bank consists solely of a year's supply of MREs or even worse, emergency rations. I can tell you, after a couple of weeks eating nothing but Mayday bars day in and day out, that would drive me nuts. So plan to have some variety in your food. And don't forget to stock up on spices and sauces and condiments and stuff like that to add a little zazz. And plan to have a balanced diet. Proteins are important, but they're not the most important thing. You also need to have roughage and vegetables and get your vitamins and other nutrients. So make sure you plan a 2,000 calorie diet and have all of the elements that you need to be healthy. And stock up on vitamins to fill in the gaps in your diet. You never know what kind of situation you're going to be in and what kind of food that you're going to be able to eat. So make sure you have some vitamins to keep your strength and your health up. You just keep in mind that vitamins have a limited shelf life. And if you have pets, don't forget to stock up on food for them. If you were planning on feeding them table scraps or leftovers, don't, because there won't be any. So make sure you have enough food for your pets and have enough water for them.